Today we celebrate the solemnity, another solemnity. Imagine that, double bubble. Last week we celebrated the solemnity of the Holy Trinity. This week we celebrate the solemnity of the body and blood of Christ. And we hear today in the story of the feeding of the 5,000, a massive crowd of people that certainly would have had logistical issues. And yet, they all ate and were satisfied. Imagine for a moment the difficulties in providing enough for all with what little they had. 5 loaves and fish. Being all together in a deserted place, they surely would have been hungry and thirsty. After speaking to the crowd about the kingdom of heaven, which Christ would instruct how bountiful and abundant the gifts and grace of heaven be, the miracle that Jesus performed wasn't just about providing ordinary food. It was much more profound and symbolic than that. As the bread that came down from heaven, Christ would go on to teach and form in an influential way a deeper understanding of who he is, and is the only one of Jesus' miracles that is included in all 4 of the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It is obvious then that for the first Christians of the first century, this event greatly affected them and continues to affect us even today. Jesus' response in today's gospel to the apostles' concern for the crowd, give them some food for yourself, challenges you and me. Not only did it challenge the disciples then, but it challenges us today, all Christians. And it challenges us not to emphasize on what little we have, but on what we do have. Let us not be tempted to see only difficulties, but possibilities. The crowds symbolically stand for all of humankind, for you and for me, then and today. And as we look out into the world, we can easily see the face of overwhelming need. We all have a longing, a hunger for so much more, yet we never seem to be satisfied. Jesus, in his action of providing so much for so many from what he was given, instructs us by example to do likewise. Christ, as a source of guidance and direction, always points us to the possibilities that abound. His presence is always with us. He abides in our midst. He is transcendent, infinite, and divine. The miracle of the 5,000 is a prefigurement of the Eucharist. The Eucharist, which is his body and blood, where only in him are we able to be satisfied. Only in him do we have our fill. In the Eucharist, Jesus gives himself to us as a food for our journey, and it is not just a symbol. For if it was, it wouldn't be enough to satisfy our hungry hearts. As the source and summit of the whole Christian life, God lives among us in the Eucharist, body and blood, soul and divinity, and we always have access to him, not only here in the liturgy at Mass, but also during adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, and always in the tabernacle. Sometimes we forget that. And we do so because we get all caught up in all our busyness, in the noise and distractions that the world seems to bombard us with. And sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking we don't have enough time to go to church and worship him. Each month here at St. Joe's, we have adoration, where the invitation is always open to all, where each of us can separate from that noise and busyness by pausing for a moment to be in the company of Jesus, present in the Eucharist to worship him. but not just to worship him, but also to thank him, showing our gratitude for his presence in our lives. It is even good and important to just spend time with him, the God living in our midst, who satisfies the restlessness of our hearts and minds. And by doing so, we experience the goodness of the Lord, where he meets all our needs and gives us sufficiency in our insufficiencies, so that from what resources we do have, we can reach the possibility of overcoming our doubts and meeting the needs of this growing world. What the Lord did in this miracle was to teach us that with God, all things are possible. And he meets the needs of people, through people like you and me, who at times may feel inadequate, tired, or emotionally drained. Jesus doesn't ask us to give what we don't have, but to give him what we do have. And in communion with him, then what we perceive as insufficient in ourselves becomes more than sufficient. Why? Because Jesus will give us his adequacy for our inadequacy if only we participate by giving of ourselves in service to God and to others. God is never outdone in generosity. He calls us to serve and not to be served. He wants us, you and me, to be Eucharist. To be Eucharist to those who are hungry. And when we surrender to him, to use what resources we have as we give them up to him, and give it to him to do with as he pleases. Through us, he will meet the needs of others, and in return will satisfy us with the fullness of himself, so that we can live with him as the source and summit of all that we do, to help meet the needs of so many people who are truly hungry and thirsty. However insufficient our inadequacies, what we have must be our commitment to a relationship with God. And it must be part, and it is part of the solution to what is lacking in the world. For it is through him that we live and move and have our being. In trusting Jesus by committing ourselves to him individually, in a deep and personal relationship with him, we can satisfy everyone and never look again for satisfaction and happiness apart from the God who provides all good things to us who place our trust in him. And by doing so, by entrusting to him all that we have and all that we are. In return, he blesses us and all that we do. And how can we not be amazed? How could we not marvel at the sight of his abundance when we see him working through us in providing for the needs of others? We should count that as a benefit that we as participants in the great work of proclaiming the good news and in making disciples of all those we encounter, that the grace of God through our actions and words will, no doubt, give us, who do his bidding and work his will through our hands, more than our fill.